Hey, ladies and gentlemen, John and Alexander back with you for some personal finance.
Yes.
It's gonna be awesome. Maybe not, but we're gonna make it awesome. So, yeah.
This topic could not possibly be boring.
No, not at all.
John, I know whenever you came to work in your helicopter this morning, you were thinking all about personal finance and how exciting this is going to be.
Yep, the helicopter really helped out.
Yes. My Lamborghini helped me get my mind in the right mind frame to talk about our finances. That 15-minute drive to get from my house to the end of the driveway, it gives me time to think and plan.
Yeah.
And we're going to share some of that wisdom with you today, listeners. Welcome to A Cup of Madness. Woo-hoo. Well, listeners, we are talking about personal finance today, and we do have some great information for you. Now, it's not the most exciting topic always, but we think we can put this in a very informative way. There's plenty to learn, plenty to work with here. Later in the program, we're going to have Chris Adams, a financial advisor with Pinnacle and Raymond James Financial, joining us in studio. He's going to give us his take on personal finance, and investing should be good stuff. Now, with money, there are four main things we can do with it. We can save it, we can invest it, we can spend it, and we can give it away. I'd like to first talk a little bit about saving money. This is what your grandmother always told you to do with that birthday check she would send you. Put it in the bank, save it. Was Grandma right? Well, yeah. I think it's good to listen to Grandma. She knows what she was talking about. The question, though, is how much should we save? And what are we saving for? Most financial experts will tell you you need to have an emergency fund. I'm going to say bare basics. You want to get $1,000 into your bank account. Most of us can manage to scrape that together pretty fast. Life happens and we need to have a backup plan. We need to have that parachute to catch us. Most financial people will tell you you need to have at least enough money to cover 6 months worth of expenses. If you lose your job, if something bad happens and you can't work for whatever reason, you're going to wish that you had that emergency fund in place to back you up. And it's not just for things like disability or losing your job. There are other things. Your air conditioner can go out at home. That's an expensive one. The roof needs to be replaced. The car blows up. I need to go car shopping myself, actually.
We're just having a nice brand new transmission put into one.
Oh, lovely.
Yes.
I'm sure that's very affordable, isn't it?
No.
But John plans ahead, and he has his emergency fund just for situations like this. John has some tips for us on how to save some money, how to cut our monthly expenditures back, and scrape together that cash we need for our emergency funds. What do you have, John?
Okay, some simple, very simple steps to saving money. Number one is get rid of your debt. If you want to stack money, you can't have somebody else demanding it go to them, which is outside your house. Like you go and take out a loan to get a car, which depreciates in value instantly. You're paying payments on that car. You don't need to do that. Maybe go get a used car to drive around so you can save up the money to actually go in there and get your new car for much cheaper. But yeah, if you're paying somebody else, you can't pay yourself, is the gist of that. Also, cut down on groceries. Meal planning helps out a ton on this. It's what we have recently started doing in our household. We prepare food all day on the weekend and then put it in the freezer in Ziploc bags so that way dinner is ready to go. And especially if you have a big family at home, that's really, really important to have that expediency on that. Also, if your grocery bill is rivaled by your subscription bill, you may want to cut down on your entertainment stuff.
That's something that adds up quickly.
Yes.
Hulu, Netflix, Amazon, they're not expensive, but you put them all together and you suddenly cut the cord and replaced it.
Exactly. When I was looking at pay apps, I found one, I think it was Fubo TV, and I was like, wow, this is cool. It has all the stuff that cable has, and it's almost the same price. Maybe like $40 shy, $20 shy, and I'm like, well, at what point does it actually make a difference?
Yes, exactly. I guess it just depends on what you watch, and I know I have cable service right now, and Disney Junior gets turned on. Occasionally a sports station gets turned on, and that's about it. I don't really use it.
Yeah. And what I love are the free apps. The Comet app actually takes the place of Sci-Fi Channel, whereas I used to get excited about what old classic cheesy, non-cheesy, whatever sci-fi show or film was coming on. Sci-Fi it doesn't really do that for me anymore. And Comet has filled those shoes. Not only is it available on your regular stations if you're getting, television through the air, but its app on Roku is fantastic.
I'm familiar with Comet. That is a good one.
I love Comet.
Yes. And you make a good point there. There are so many free, basically internet television stations at this point. They carry older content, which, it's still good, and if you haven't seen it, it's new to you.
Exactly. Pluto TV is another fantastic one, which very much has the TV Guide viewer, and you can, skip down through there and find something that you want to watch. But I think that is one thing that I really, maybe nostalgia or oversaturation by on-demand services. I think that's one of the things that I really miss about the old television is that, you had commercial breaks, but also the excitement of seeing the variety of what was coming on. It's really, really nice to kind of have that element to it.
Oh, yes, yes.
So.
Of course, being nostalgic, the surprise of channel surfing is gone.
Yes, exactly. You can't stumble upon something.
2-second delay, and yes, you can't stumble on it. And there's no more sitting there just hitting the button, flicking through.
Yeah, it's like, come on, please surprise me, cable. And it just, you don't have those moments.
Our younger listeners are now asking themselves, how old are these guys?
That's correct. Let me go get my shoes with the rubber soles. You need to cancel all those subscriptions and memberships for those of you who stuck through that last diatribe. And buy generic. Basics do not have to be name brand as long as they're not breaking.
Fun activity over the weekend. Go buy a name brand, buy a generic brand, have a blind taste test with your friends.
Yeah, just like soft drinks.
Absolutely. You will be surprised at how close those generic brands are to the name brands or how much better they are.
Yeah, in some cases, they are much, much, much better. But, with me, I usually pick and choose maybe one or two items that change from grocery bill to grocery bill that I buy name brand on that I just enjoy. For me personally, Cinnamon Toast Crunch, fantastic. There will never be a substitute for Cinnamon Toast Crunch.
I don't know if I've ever had that.
Oh, it's amazing. It used to be way better, but it's still amazing. Like, you can just, if you can, never mind, we'll talk about that later. Okay, so, yes, as we said, cut ties with cable was a very, very big thing. Buy generic. Automate your savings. It's kind of going into a philosophy that I have is that if I take money from my paycheck and I put it towards anything, which I prefer to pay myself, but if I put it towards anything, if I didn't know about it, I never missed it. If I never saw it in my bank account, I couldn't spend it. Do I know that I have a savings account or whatever out there? Yes, I know it's out there, but I'm not actively hunting it down for McDonald's or something. So it's just something kind of out of my immediate gratification range.
Takes far more effort to go to the bank than to open your wallet.
Exactly, and I'm not doing that. Kind of on the same note, you should really spend your extra money very, very wisely. There are times when everyone's like, oh, surprise, we dropped a ton of cash on you. And it may have come from something, I don't know, as tragic as inheritance or, maybe there was a slip up in a purchase you made and you have $40 more than you thought you had. Whatever it is, be responsible and have a place for that to go.
Always have a plan.
Exactly.
And we do recommend talking with professional financial advisors. We're going to give you an overview on all of these financial topics today. It's basically a starting place for a conversation with someone who is qualified, licensed, and knows what they're doing day in and day out with this.
Yeah, the few other steps that are just easy fixes, easy tips. Reduce energy costs. Maybe take shorter showers. Fixing leaky pipes. Washing your clothes in cold water. Installing dimmer switches, or maybe even LED bulbs. I was really happy when LED caught on. Fantastic stuff. But the only downside to cheaper electric bills would be that the electric company is not making money, so they raise rates. You know, even though it's kind of a shell game for a little while, it eventually catches up with you. But for the time being, it's a worthwhile investment. Also, if you're one of those people who just cannot stop yourself from going and buying every single thing you see on the internet because it has a special offer, and you must have all special offers in the world, unsubscribe from those. There are moments that I get that fever and I'm just like, click, 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 and I've racked up a bill. It's terrible. Oh my Lord. But again, you know, like paying yourself, if it never hit my bank account, I didn't know about it. It was not right there for me. So if you never knew about all these special offers, you're better off. Just stay away. If you can borrow something instead of buy it, do that. What's family for? Friends for? I mean, you know, help each other out. It's not a bad thing. Kind of touching on the grocery thing, if you pack your lunch, you're saving tons of money right there. If you're going maybe out to the movies or to any place that you might have heard about at one point in time that offered discounts, ask about it. Senior discounts, student discounts, military, maybe exclusive club members. But I know that when I was in college, I used my student ID to get discounts. Like, I would always ask if I was going to the movies. Also, if you're at work and they offer you like some retirement benefits or maybe a 401k plan, and they'll even match what you put in up to a certain percentage, that's like free money. Why wouldn't you do that? And again, going into if it's not in front of me and I don't know about it, I'm not going to spend it. Like Alexander said, I'm not going to the bank to pull that out. I'm just not doing it. You can also maybe cut down on some of your plans outside of cable, cell phone plans. If you can limit your behaviors to control your data plan, you know, just really see how far you can whittle it down. I mean, it's worse that could happen. You might wind up living life a little bit, you know, outside of that phone. Worst comes to worst, you know, just go scorched earth and try a spending freeze. Only buy the essentials.
That's a fun activity, and I think that can really put your daily life or monthly budget into perspective whenever you just pay your rent, utilities, and food and nothing else for a month. Really interesting to do that sometime, because you will see what you truly miss and what you're wasting money on because you can live without it and you may not even notice. The exciting part of money is the investing part. Everybody wants to be the one to find the Amazon stock at $3 and turn it into $1 million. That may not be realistic, let's face it, but there are plenty of great ways to take your money and turn it into more money. Joining us today on A Cup of Madness is Chris Adams, an investment advisor with Pinnacle Asset Management and Raymond James Financial Services. Chris, thanks for being here today.
Thanks for having me, Alexander. I appreciate it.
Can you tell us a little bit about what you do?
Yeah, so I'm an investment advisor at Pinnacle Asset Management. It's a division of Pinnacle Bank. We also use Raymond James as our broker-dealer, so I actually work downtown, but I help people with their financial needs, plan for long-term investing, retirement planning, 401ks, that sort of thing.
Great. When we're talking about investing, how is investing money different from saving it?
Really, the difference comes down to time horizon. Saving money is more short-term, and it's very important that you do that to cover any sort of unexpected expenses that you might have. But investing is longer term, and typically I define that as sort of an intermediate or long term, being 5 years or more. So you're really looking for any goals that you may have that are 5 years or longer, and that allows us to invest the money, take a little bit of risk if that's what you're interested in doing, but basically to just have a longer term time horizon.
What kind of difference can that make compared to just, say, putting a certain amount of money into a savings account each month?
Well, I always tell clients that they really need to have an ample savings account set up first. And that looks different for different people, but you're wanting to make sure that you have your basic expenses covered. It might be 6 to 12 months worth of expenses, but you just want to make sure that if something does come up, if you have to put a new roof on your house, you've got ample liquidity there in a savings account or something like that. So investing money is certainly going to be longer term, and the reason people do that partly is because of inflation. Inflation is typically about 2.5% right now, and basically what inflation is the spending power of money, and it decreases over time. So if the inflation rate is 2.5% roughly, every year your spending power goes down about 2.5%. So let's put it kind of in dollars and cents. If you're investing or putting money in a savings account, maybe making 0.25%, but inflation is 2.5%, you're eroding your spending power over time. Now, don't get me wrong, I think savings is very important, but people invest longer term, number one, to outpace inflation. So they're trying to make sure they preserve their money over the long term if it continues to grow higher than inflation. But really, when you're thinking longer term, you're able to take a little more risk with the money, and then instead of maybe a 0.25% in a savings account, you can look at greater returns depending on how much risk you take.
So with the savings account paying out less than inflation, am I essentially losing money?
That's, some people look at it that way, and I guess in a dollars and cents perspective, you are. It doesn't feel like that though, because you don't see an inflation adjustment, on your account, say like a fee or something like that. But really, over the long term, you are. If you just are putting money in something that's only, making a little bit, and inflation is 2.5%, eventually it does erode over time. But again, that said, I think savings accounts are great vehicles for someone who's wanting to keep their money liquid, and again, use it for unexpected expenses. That's really what it's designed for, not long-term savings.
You had mentioned an emergency fund earlier. How much did you say for that? 6 to 12 months?
Sort of a general rule of thumb is 6 to 12 months of your budgeted expenses, and it can be more or less depending on your finances dictate. But some people have significantly more than that and way too much in savings. And those people are really good candidates for investing. But I think the way I look at it is this: if you were to lose your job, something catastrophic were to happen, you don't want to have to go into your 401k or maybe some longer term investments to fund that, hopefully a short term need. That's what you really want your savings there for.
Oh, that makes sense. Definitely. Chris, how would you respond to the stigma that investing and financial advisors are only for people who are already wealthy?
I think that is a great question, and it's something that, quite frankly, we really, as investment advisors, need to do a better job to sort of deconstruct, because it's certainly a very valid stigma. A lot of investment advisors, that really is what they focus on, are sort of the high net worth clients. And that's great, because people with more money need more advice, and they have issues that sort of average people like us don't, and they need that expertise. But I certainly don't think it applies, because I think average people need investment advice. They need long-term planning, probably more than a lot of wealthy clients do.
How should someone who's in college or just starting out in a first job approach investing?
I would say it's never too early to start investing. I think that's a common mistake, really, is that you're either too young or maybe too late in the game to start investing, and that's rarely the case. For people who are young, someone just out of college looking at maybe their first job, look at participating in your 401k or some other type of employer retirement plan. There are lots of them out there: 401ks, 403bs, simple IRAs, but they all kind of accomplish the same thing, where you have a portion of your paycheck each week deposited into a retirement account in your name, most often there will be an employer match where your employer will match maybe up to 3% or so, hypothetically, into an account in your name. So you're putting money away, your employer is putting money away for you as well. And a lot of times it's really out of sight, out of mind. You don't see it. It comes out of your paycheck, but it's not like it's hitting your bank account and you're seeing that money go out. It's just sort of a painless way to begin. And a lot of people younger people especially, will think, well, I don't really want to do that. I'm in my first job. I may only be here for 2 years or less. I'm not planning on making a career out of this one stop along my career path. But I would tell you to go ahead and get started, because 401ks and most retirement plans are pretty portable. So your next job may have a 401k and you can roll that into your next job too, or to an IRA. So you've got options. It's not like you just lose that money if you change jobs.
That employer match sounds like free money to me.
That's a great way of looking at it. I mean, it really is. It's a great benefit. And not all employers offer them. Some plans are just for employee contributions only, but it's from an employer's perspective, it's really good. It helps attract people to know that my employer is going to put 3%, 4%, whatever it may be. All the plans are different, but it really is sort of free money if you look at it that way.
What about the other side of that? People who are closer to retirement age and realize they've not saved or invested enough for retirement.
Yeah, that one is a little more difficult. Those pre-retirement age people, or even retirement age clients that I have, it really requires having, I think, an investment expert to help you out, someone who can help you plan for that scenario. It can be more difficult, but life happens. People go through divorces, job losses. You might have a business that goes under. I mean, any number of things can happen that kind of derail your retirement plans. But rarely, in my experience, is it too late to start or to rebuild. I can say, though, that it requires a little more expertise and a little more planning, and that's really where I think an investment advisor can really assist out there with that.
I know every case is unique, but is the overall strategy very different between the two age groups?
Yeah, it usually is, although not always. So I'll preface by saying that everyone's investment experience, their risks are different. I have some very young clients who are typically, younger people are more aggressive, but they are not. They're very conservative, and that's okay. And I have an 80-year-old client who is very aggressive, and you would think that would not be the case. But everyone is different. But yes, generally speaking, younger people have more time to let their money grow, so they can usually afford to take those risks. And then as you get closer to retirement, you start thinking about maybe taking your foot off the gas a little bit and becoming more conservative and thinking about sort of preserving what you've already gained. But that said, people are living longer than they used to. So we have to sort of plan for people having longer lifespans as well, and not outliving their money too.
When we're planning for retirement, is the idea that it takes $1 million accurate?
$1 million isn't universally true. For a lot of people, that can be a good guidepost to go by, and certainly looks nice on a statement to have that. But it's I think a helpful starting point. But to be honest with you, everybody's different. The things that I look for when talking about retirement planning with people are, asking questions like, what do you want to do in retirement? Do you want to be a globetrotter where you travel around in your retirement? Are you looking at buying a second home? Or are you comfortable just staying in Gallatin and helping raise the grandkids? Everyone's sort of got their own idea of what retirement looks like, and it takes a different amount of money to accomplish those goals. So, for someone who's going to be spending weeks in Europe every 6 weeks or so, that's going to be a very different look than someone who's just going to basically stay close to home. So there's a lot of factors to consider in there: debt, Social Security benefits, just someone's overall health. So $1 million, if that helps you as someone who's young, working towards that goal, then absolutely. I think that's a great place to look. But just kind of know it's not a universal truth.
When we do retire and the paychecks from work stop coming in, How do we handle that monthly cash flow from our investments?
That's a great question, and people you might think that because it's a retirement account, it's sort of hard to get to, and that's usually just not the case. A couple things, for at least for retirement accounts, you have to be 59 and a half or older to take money out of a retirement account without having any additional penalties. If you're younger than 59 and a half, there's the IRS hits you with an additional penalty plus taxes. So that's one thing to kind of keep in mind when we're talking about retirement withdrawals. But it's as simple as setting up a bank draft, and we can just set it up to go automatically, say on the 15th of the month or whatever. It's really no different than taking money out of a savings account for most people. One thing that we do often do, if you say, Chris, I need $500 a month, we might change some of your investments to automatically allow $500 a month, say, in interest to come in. So, for example, we might take some of your stocks, convert that into a bond that's going to pay, the equivalent of $500 a month, and then that way we know we've always got that coming due each month, let's say, and then we'll send that out there to you. So it's pretty painless, actually.
Yeah, it sounds simple.
It is, yeah.
At what point should we begin to approach our money with a long-term perspective?
That's another good question, and I would say you're never too young to start thinking about money long term. And it's not that you need to think about every decision in long term perspectives, but I think it's healthy to look at a short term decision and sort of consider what the long term perspective might be. For example, a lot of people kind of are used to getting cost of living raises, 2.5%, 3%. That kind of goes back to inflation. But let's say you get a 3% raise in December, effective in January. 3% is nice to have, and certainly is going to give you a little more spending money. But it's not probably going to change your life, most likely. But let's say you, instead of taking that 3% and just putting in your savings account or spending it, you increased your 401k by 3%. Again, you're not really feeling that difference. That's money that you got in a raise, but now you're just siphoning that money off to your 401k. Maybe next year you get a 4% raise and do the same thing. So that really does have a long-term perspective and a long-term impact. So I think that's sort of an example of a small thing. Another one might be, do I really need to buy the sports car, the brand new sports car, when maybe my sedan is fine? My sedan is fine personally that I drive. So, or maybe buying a used car, or what are the expenses of financing versus just paying cash for something? Those are things that you don't have necessarily a long-term perspective. You're not thinking about, a 30-year time horizon on should I buy this car or not. But just thinking about money in that manner helps you make overall more sound financial decisions, I think.
Well, the other side of that, when can we stop worrying about money?
Some people never stop worrying about money, and I'm sort of one of those too. I worry about money just like everybody else. But this is where I think having an advisor helps, because an advisor can take an objective look at your financial picture and make a recommendation. And I see this almost every day when clients who come in maybe with some anxiety about how much they've saved or not. And these are clients that I've already established some sort of a plan for. And they can come in and we remind them, this is the plan. Are we off the plan? Are we on the plan? And if we're off the plan, maybe we need to make some changes. But usually what I see by the end of that meeting is people feel better because they know there's a plan in place. Maybe they're off the plan. We need to make these changes. Maybe we need to change the plan, but they have an action plan in place, and that's something that a financial advisor can do, is give you some objective advice and help you steer you in the right direction.
I think you've made a good case for financial advisors so far, but how do we go about selecting one?
That is another good question because a lot of times people just don't know where to begin, and they get sort of paralyzed by that. I will say that the internet has, like everything else, has democratized things. They have democratized investing to a large degree. So some people are able to just open up an online investing account, make a few clicks, and start to work and buy stocks, buy mutual funds, anything that an investment advisor could do for you. What used to be called a stockbroker, you can now do that online. And for people who have the time and ability to do that, it's excellent. It's an excellent avenue for them to do that. But for most people, they benefit from having a true financial advisor who can, maybe they don't want to learn all of those ins and outs of how to invest or which stocks to buy and that sort of thing. So I think the two most important things are trust and communication when it comes to selecting a financial advisor, and really just any relationship. Things to look for are, is this advisor objective? Do they have the freedom to run their own practice to their strengths? I think it's very important for you to discuss fees with your advisor. Ask them how they're compensated. It's a fair question. And it's something that I like to talk to all my clients about, just sort of remind them, we may have an investment strategy and this is the fee that you're paying on it. Here's why you're paying it. Here are some alternatives, those sorts of things. But I don't shy away from having that fee discussion with people because I think they need to know. And it's a very good question for you to ask an advisor, and no advisor should really bristle at that. I think it's important to set expectations for how often you want to communicate with your advisor. That's something that I see a lot of times. Clients have an expectation and maybe the advisor is not meeting that, or vice versa. So as you're starting out with an advisor, ask, how often do you meet with your clients? And your advisor should probably ask you the same thing. How often do you want to meet with me? Some people just want, a phone call a couple times a year, and that's all they want. Other people want, a quarterly face-to-face meeting. Making sure that you're on the same page there is really important. And finally, I'd say that your advisor is just responsive rather to your questions and concerns, that they're not dismissive. And most advisors that I've worked with, none of these are issues, but these are all things that I would certainly tell my family members if I weren't a financial advisor. This is what you need to be looking for.
Well, Chris, as a financial advisor, let me ask you personally, what is the one thing in your career you wish you had known whenever you were 20 years old?
I wish I had known to buy Google, to buy Amazon. I actually remember talking people out of buying Google because I thought, this is just a search engine. How are they going to make money? There's always those hindsight is 20/20 moments. So I've got a few of those, more than a few of those. But really, the thing that I would tell 20-year-old Chris Adams is to keep your emotion in check during volatile times. And this is one that I did learn fairly quickly, but it's one that financial advisors kind of have to remind themselves of because we see it happen in our clients all the time. When things start to go bad, when the tech bubble in 2000 burst, you have 9/11 a year later, the Great Recession in 2008, 2009. Those are all very rough times. And just more recently in the fourth quarter, we had another sort of market dip. Keeping your emotion in check during these volatile times is really important because people can think with their emotion versus thinking through, logically, and that's what an advisor should do. It should be objective and recognize that, it really stinks to open up your statement and see that you've lost money for the quarter, or maybe for the year, even if it's a really sort of a bad year. But having an advisor there who can kind of, again, help you come up with a strategy. Here's why we're doing this, and yeah, I know last quarter was tough, but these things happen. This is long-term money. You may not need this money for retirement for another 20 years, so kind of keeping things in perspective. But that's not to say that you should just completely dismiss emotion. I mean, sometimes people just can't sleep at night because their accounts are down, and if that's the case, maybe we need to make some changes because maybe you're not as risk tolerant as you thought. So again, having those conversations are important, and keeping emotions in check, but recognizing that they're powerful too is something I wish I'd known earlier.
Chris Adams, financial advisor with Pinnacle Asset Management and Raymond James Financial Services. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Alexander. I appreciate it. Great podcast, and keep up the good work.
Thank you. I've just been handed a little bit of copy here by the people in the business suits in the corner office upstairs. Please remember, A Cup of Madness is a show for entertainment purposes only. We do not endorse any specific financial products or services. Please seek the guidance of a licensed professional when making financial or tax decisions. Securities offered through Raymond James Financial Services Incorporated, member FINRA/SIPC, and are not insured by the FDIC, NCUA, or any other financial institution, agency, or government agency. Are not deposits or obligations of the financial institution, are not guaranteed by the financial institution, and are subject to risk, including the possible loss of principal. So anyway, those are just a few investment options, things to look into, do your homework, talk to an advisor about.
Real estate, when to buy a house. Some key steps when deciding if you should buy a home. Evaluate your finances, consider the housing market, and think about your life stage, where you're at. Save for a down payment. It's probably the biggest purchase that you're going to make, and you need to really make sure that you're ready. Ask yourself if you're financially ready to buy a house. How much should you save? Consider things like down payment. You consider things such as closing costs, prepaids, moving, other expenses. It's quite a costly, drawn-out ordeal.
The down payment's a big one, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, it's 20%, and then you don't have to have PMI or private mortgage insurance.
Yes, that's
yeah,
it. Yeah.
Save a ton of money by not having that.
It does do a lot of good just to wait and save up. And if you are looking at entering the market and you find out that the interest rates are high, keep planning, keep saving, and wait for them to go down, and then come to the table with even more money. I mean, if you're able to do that, if you're able to, govern your passions, I understand buying a house is a big deal, but if you're able to do it, why not?
Yeah, one thing I read about was how young people are buying more house than they can afford. They grew up in these great neighborhoods where their parents had bought, and they wanted that immediately. The 3,000 square foot house in the top of the notch neighborhood, and so they're taking on a lot of debt just to get that. Whereas their parents had started out in the smaller, more affordable starter homes and worked their way up. But, it might be something to where you move 10 miles outside of town to where land prices go down a little bit.
True.
You get a house that's a bit smaller, and let's face it, newly married couple, how much space do you really need? Find that nice small starter house that's in a pretty good space, and go from there.
Getting pre-approved for a mortgage, that's kind of a biggie. You can go and get quick conversation, income, assets, down payment, and they can pre-qualify you. But getting pre-approved is a whole different thing. That right there lets them know that you are serious. The bank has signed off saying, hey, we'll back this person. We will loan them money. That's the difference between pre-qualified and pre-approved. It's really important that you find the right real estate agent. You want to go with somebody who's really, really good, because when you pay them, you want them to have fought for your position in a deal, especially if you wind up in like a bidding war, or you want to really hammer away at, no, this is not fixed on the checklist and it's going to cost more money to do this. We're not going to pay this amount. You really want somebody in your corner who can negotiate and fight for you. It's really important. You want somebody that you can ask those tough questions. If you have a real estate agent and you don't feel that they're up to the task of answering those questions, or they don't really like being asked those questions, walk away and get somebody else. Free to do that. The other thing to consider is buy the least expensive home in the best neighborhood that you can afford. Find that golden mean. If you don't have a real estate agent to fight for that goal, you might want to consider getting another one, because that's what you're going for. You want the best your money can buy. You also need to pay attention to the values in that area. Are they rising or declining? The businesses, are they opening up new businesses everywhere, or are all the shops being shuttered? Those are telltale signs of what type of area that you're moving into. And also research the school districts, even if you don't have children, because some economists estimate that apparently there's a 5% improvement in test scores that can raise home prices by 2.5% in suburban areas.
Oh, absolutely.
So,
yeah, if you don't have the children, whoever you sell to might have children. It's great marketing.
Yeah, it's a good selling point. Good selling point.
Probably the biggest problem with debt is the opportunity cost that you have. Whenever you take on that debt and you're making those monthly payments, you're not paying just what you borrowed, you're having to pay interest. You pay for the privilege of using that money ahead of time. And over the long haul, that can truly make a difference in your finances. I sat down with a pencil and paper and did a few calculations. If you are buying a house and you borrow $100,000 for that house, check the interest rates right now. On a 30-year mortgage, it's 4.25%. That comes out to $492 a month, which I think most people could work that into their budget well enough. The thing is, you're borrowing $100,000. Over the life of that loan, you're going to pay back $177,000. $77,000 more than you borrowed. We hope you've enjoyed our show today on financial planning, and we hope that you have some things to think about, and we hope that you will definitely go out, find a good financial advisor, get yourself a little checkup financially. Keep in mind, personal finance is something that you need to seek out some good professional advice on, but hopefully this is a good conversation starter.
We also hope you're still awake.
Absolutely. Next week, what are you talking about, John?
We're going to be talking about antiques and collectibles.
I'm going to be on the road doing some research at spring break, so April will be in studio with John next time.
Be sure to tune in.